Hi there, I am Bria Kievit. Welcome to this Pecha Kucha style presentation for the course Liability and the Internet, which is part of the program of Liberal Arts and Sciences of Tilburg University. Well, this presentation gives an overview of the problem of child sexual abuse and exploitation in relation to the Internet and other online technologies, and it is from a children's rights perspective. Well, it does not attempt to cover all aspects of the problem. It is based on parts of European legislation on the rights of children and Save the Children's comprehensive program experience in working on this complex issue. While the Internet is a global network of information accessible with a computer, there are 80 million websites filled with educational and recreational information and linked with other related sites to create a spider-like web of topics known as the World Wide Web. But the Internet and World Wide Web are not regulated in any way, and therefore information on the Internet may be accurate information and useful, and at the same time may also be inaccurate, incomplete, or contain misleading information. Or certainly some sites can be considered inappropriate by any community standards, of which child pornography is one of the main issues concerning the Internet of today. Well, there has been much international discussion about the correct terminology that should be used to describe the sexual abuse and exploitation of children recorded on film or photograph. The term child pornography is almost universally used when describing the recorded image of children who are subjected to sexual abuse. But this term has been criticized by Save the Children as inappropriate within a child protection or children's right framework, as it can be misinterpreted and undermine the seriousness of the abuse, but also tends to oversimplify what is a very complex social problem with many diverse factors converging on the fact that there is a cross-section of adults that have a sexual interest in children. Well, besides the terminology, the most discussed difficulties in combating child sexual abuse and the commercial sexual exploitation of children via the Internet is the international multi-jurisdictional nature of the crime. It's a cross-border activity. Of course, European Union member states have taken steps to tackle this problem by defining what constitutes child pornography and by harmonizing legislation on the imposition of sentences with national penal codes concerning this kind of pornography on the Internet. Well, the European Union has also agreed that the protection of children includes all citizens up to the age of 18. However, very few victims of this form of child abuse are identified and given access to justice and to therapeutic services. While Interpol's database of abused images contains images of more than 20,000 individual children who have been sexually abused, while globally less than 350 of these children have been identified and protected according to Interpol. But this low number of children being identified should be of great concern to those who are in a position to minimize child pornography. The fact that primary recorded evidence of sexual abuse and implemented national penal codes is not leading to more children being protected and given justice needs to be addressed urgently. Well, EU member states should ensure that the framework decision of the European Union is fully implemented so that it can establish clear child protection policies with regard to sexual abuse. Besides that, the EU should also ensure that it monitors the implementation of the framework decision and to take action, that action is taken where member states to fail to implement the legislation. While more emphasis is needed on helping member states identify children who are abused in the production and distribution of sexual abuse exploitative images on the Internet. Well, Save the Children recommends on their website that the European Commission establish an expert group on victim identification. However, in the end, it are the national governments that have an ongoing responsibility to develop national strategies which will ensure the safety and protection of children using the Internet and those being exploited in the production of abusive images. The monitoring mechanisms envisaged by the commitments made at the First and Second World Congress against commercial sexual exploitation and children in Stockholm of 1996 and Yokohama in 2001 should help international governments maintain their focus on this aim. But governments need to be aware that changes in legislation will be necessary to meet the new demands on child protection as the Internet develops. This is particularly important given the increase in soliciting children over the Internet and the so-called grooming process. The UK has recently introduced legislation to outlaw grooming of minors as such, One must admit that this example needs to be followed by other national governments in order to give a clear signal to groom minors in order to abuse them sexually, that it is illegal online as well as in any other public area. So one can call or must call for a move from public acknowledgement and developments of plans to concrete interventions against those who directly as well as indirectly sexually exploit children. Maybe it's via the production and distribution also of child pornography. Well, policymakers should also acknowledge the complexity of the problem. Child sexual exploitation is unlikely to be prevented unless the diversity of the people who sexually exploit children is also fully taken into account. Well, of course, in the end, one can conclude there is still a lot to do about what one calls child pornography on the internet. The implemented national penal code should be designed in such a way that it minimizes this form of cybercrime as much as possible, since Interpol proved that it is not as far as one thought it was or should be. Well, although one must admit that the problem at hand is extremely complex and diverse, one can also conclude that we as human beings are in fact aware of the problem. It is time to do something about it. It is time for concrete intervention and prevention. In fact, we are obliged to stop child pornography. It is our task. Well, I just gave you a quick overview of the problem of child pornography, but I hope it is enough to prove my point that we still have to do a lot about it, and that the problem is maybe more severe than we at first thought. I just hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I just want to thank you for your attention. Thanks and goodbye.